We're going to turn to our first story here, Rania, which is obviously, one of the biggest stories on earth and has been for some time, and that is not just the situation in Gaza, but the extremely acute humanitarian crisis happening there with the restriction of aid, the stopping of aid that has been happening there for, I think, over 60 days at this point. And we are very, very honored to be joined here on the show once again by Afif Nasuli, who's a humanitarian medical worker in Gaza. Afif, thank you so much for being back with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor always to be with you.
Well, it's an honor to have you with us. And as I mentioned, it's been about 60 days, I believe, since Israel has completely cut off the flow of aid into Gaza. You're on the ground working on logistics. And I mean, just give us a sense of what you're seeing now. I mean, what this famine looks like, what people are able to eat. I mean, I guess this includes you yourself there as someone who's on the ground.
Famine looks like the least fortunate people sort of crowding around community kitchens with pots and pans and sort of begging these community kitchens, which are all but out of rice, for something, for some morsels. I've seen so many kids crying from hunger, which I feel is like particularly hard to see and particularly hard to experience because it's so visceral. Um, it looks like people eating rice off the floor and molded bread. Doctors and staff are, as a logistics person, I'm like acutely aware of doctors and staff not getting the things they need to operate, so they're getting sick. Um, a lot of people are eating like one meal of rice at night if they're lucky. And I guess really practically, it looks like everyone is really just so skinny, and that might sound really weird to say, but it literally is just so visually apparent how many people are just feeling so hungry and skinny. And I know men who have lost like hundreds of pounds in the last 100 pounds in the last year. A couple of men have shown me pictures of themselves, and they are literally half the size of what they were. I personally have been eating like about one meal a day. I even really got sick the other week, last week. I don't know if you can hear these bombs, but they're getting worse. Um, and I got really sick because I just wasn't getting enough calories. And what's weird that I'm experiencing is getting like skinnier, but also feeling really bloated because I'm eating like high salt canned goods that I brought from my man and like salty, just whatever it is. It's just canned or it's like rice. Um, it looks like going to these health cluster meetings where there's just more problems than there are solutions. Um, it's weird because it's also experiencing Israel trying to control the aid and displace, like having a plan to displace people, and it's just gotten so bad that I'm actually really, I mean, I've been pretty positive this entire time and inspired, but for the last week or so, it's just felt really sad and hard, and I feel it in my body. There's just not a lot of stuff to buy at the market. Even the market is empty. It's scary, and it doesn't look like Israel's stopping anytime soon. So there just doesn't feel like anything. There's a really sad feeling of like we're literally going hungry. Like the Gazans feel like they're literally being abandoned, and that slow, cruel famine is different than acute bombs. It's slow and it's choking.
I mean, that just sounds completely horrific. And it's certainly, like you said, I mean, the bombs are still falling. This is all happening. It's like everything all at once, and Israel's threatening to make it worse. You mentioned, you deal a lot with the doctors and the medics that are treating injured people. We talk a lot about food, which you just discussed in terms of, how difficult it is to have to go without it. I also can't imagine the mental like slowdown that goes with just being hungry all the time. But the blockade is also stopping so much more than that. I also mentioned, I know there's water is hard for people to find. A lot of people spend all day looking for just a tiny amount of water to drink, which we forgot to ask you about. But I'm curious, what kinds of medical supplies or basic necessities are no longer getting in as well? How is that affecting your team's ability to provide treatment with people or even transport the injured? And again, like all of this with the backdrop of being weak and hungry.
I'll say that like the last couple of I don't know if it's very abnormal, but the last couple of rotations, a lot of nurses and doctors haven't gotten in. So I also extended my stay here. The amount that you're supposed to stay is 4 weeks, and now I'm staying 8 weeks. Um, there aren't gloves. There's no soap. There's no types of fluids to put IVs into people to just get them hydrated. Like you said, water is like the desalination plants run on fuel. Fuel is low. So you're just getting less in terms of like medications. There's like not people getting let in. Like there was a lot of people rejected from getting in this last round. So a lot of just supplies, like just regular stethoscopes, things like that, that people bring just for their own capacity to like help people and then leave here so that, there's just more supply, even if it's just one or two things. Those aren't coming in right now. It means people are dying from like avoidable diseases. It's hard because it was already overwhelming, and now it feels like we're at this stage where it's like almost hard to comprehend how they're still going. Like I said, like 70% of like water desalination plants, the infrastructure has been destroyed, and that's like just a rough estimate. I'm sure it could be more than that. So as I said, there's no more fuel. So no fuel has been let in. A few days ago, they were saying that like the hospitals were about to run out of fuel. So once the hospitals run out of fuel, they can't run. They cannot like work. There are also ambulances that need fuel. There's so much that obviously fuel is extremely important to just running things. So it's hard to get things to people like tourniquets or medication or food, because you have to really think twice about whether you're going to use that car. And then walking, you don't know who you're walking with. The other day there's been so many massacres on, my colleagues were 50 feet from a massacre last week that happened on a tuk-tuk, and there was blood all over the car. It was so intense. It's like nothing's being let in, which has these ripple effects, which I think are hard to fathom. But when you see it really live, you just realize we all like run on so many little resources that we don't even think about. I think, as you were saying, in Lebanon, it's like you get a closer understanding of like when electricity is being provided by like one, situation, and it can easily go out. Like the Zaim, is in charge. It's much, much more intense here, even because nothing is now in this enclave. Like it's been since early March, nothing's been let in. So it's hard. I mean, I can't express it in any other way other than it's just really, really hard to watch and experience.
No, I almost said I can only imagine, but honestly, I really can't imagine. But, in the context of so much of what we're seeing, the massacres you mentioned, I think, of course, the one that caught a lot of people's eyes, what happened in the restaurant recently. I mean, it's hard to even really imagine, even saying whether things are better or worse. But does it seem like the intensity and the bombings and the attacks is increasing recently? I mean, what are you seeing in that sense? Does it feel like there's just a continued ramping up of casualties, or how do you see that?
Yeah, I mean, the massacre that happened in Gaza, we call it Gaza, but it's like Gaza City. I was literally, I was just there and
Mhm.
had left on a tuk-tuk down south to like within an hour or two of that bombing. So
Wow.
like feeling, and fate is fate, and we believe that as Muslims, but it's just weird to like experience that feeling of those people died and I didn't die, and I was literally like I just had to go down south. Like I could have easily been walking around. It happened really close. When I'm up north, I'm staying with Bisan Auda and her father, and we do the things we need to do as logistics people because they also have a big network. So there's, you crowdsource, you help each other do the things you need to do for healthcare workers, go on desalination, run like distribution of water. These attacks feel like they're like 82 people were killed yesterday, like 60 something people have been killed today. Like it's becoming a situation where not only are people dying in a higher number by acute aggressive violence, they're also hungry while they're dying. And I've talked to a few people today that it feels like they feel like it's been the worst it's ever been in terms of just being so hungry and in pain. So I don't know. It's hard to put it into words, but it just feels like this has gotten so bad, in many ways at once, but in two very large ways, which is people are suffering from inside their bodies, and then they're also suffering from outside their bodies because of the violence that's happening on them. And yeah, the Thai restaurant that was bombed, it was just surreal to just be a person that understands your movement is like really, really really like risky. Like you don't know what is coming next.
I mean, I don't even know what to say, Afif. It's just what you're describing is so insane. And on top of the horrors that we're witnessing, Israel's promising to escalate even more. I'm sure you've seen the news. They've called up all these reservists. They're demanding people evacuate to even smaller and smaller enclaves. They're talking about reconquering Gaza. It's kind of like Ben Gavir's dreams are being enacted. I'm just curious, seeing that take place right now. What's your reaction to all these threats from the Israelis that are growing with intensity and ferocity, with nobody standing in the way, it seems? And what does that mean on the ground? Is this something people are talking about? Is it something that people are frightened about?
I'll say that the tone has definitely shifted. I feel people are actually really just unsure of what tomorrow looks like. I say my reaction is that this was always the plan. Like, I think we can comfortably say that this was some, like, before is like I said before, I remember last time I said, like, Israel's kind of like an urban development company, and the company culture is Zionism, and it makes a big religious appeal that this is, like, extremely important to their sort of background and their history, but it's really just about money and, like, owning more land. It's like really about, that's something that has been happening since before October 7th, and I feel like what's going on right now is the exacting of a plan that has been in motion for a long time, and being here is surreal because you're literally watching the thing you knew was coming, but it just still feels shocking. So it's weird to feel shocked, but because it's like, of course, this was what they wanted. They're supremacists. They want Lebanon. They want Syria. They think Gaza is theirs. And it really feels like it's a matter of money over people's lives. And I do think that this is a crime against humanity. And I think Palestinians are 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 really aware of the fact that no one is trying to help them. Like, I think that so many of their experiences in the last couple of weeks have been so incredibly intense that there is this feeling really probably not coming. It's probably not coming. And I feel like that's new in the conversation. Maybe I've been getting more intimate with people and they're telling me more of a truth than maybe what they were trying to, feel strong about. But at some point it becomes like you don't plan for the future. You're just, like, really just trying to get your meal, your, like, calories in today, and tomorrow you literally have no idea where the water and food is coming from because there just isn't that around. And so, I mean, I could talk for hours about it, but it does feel like, this is something that was going to happen anyways. And reading the messages from, like, the joint health community, like the like more formal UN sort of bodies, or the WHO bodies that are like, Israel wants to, like, pass out aid, and Israel is going to not pass out aid in the north so that everyone moves to the south. It's just the real cruelty because there's so many people in the north that don't have food, and if you know you're not going to give them anything, you're going to block them from getting anything and forcing them to move down south on a hunger level that is insane. It just, again, like I said, I'm, like, at a loss for words. Like, I'm also hungry. Like, so it's
Mhm.
hard to even put it into words, the cruelty that's going on right now.
No, I think that's a critically important point, and it just, I think something that a lot of people are wondering is how do people keep going? How are people surviving? I mean, what does that look like? Because I think, for many people it feels like the limits of human endurance, are being exceeded just based on what we're hearing.
You know, I think I want to be positive and I want to highlight the gratefulness and the humbleness and the faith people have, because it's true. They really, really unbelievably say alhamdulillah after, which means you should, like, they thank God in every sentence, and it's this psychology that gives them strength, because I think that they are capable of just understanding that having nothing is the test of God for some reason. It is what is written, and it is going to be certainly written into the history of the world that this was wrong. And they have faith that everyone will know that they are going to be, there will be justice in some realm. But as I said, the more conversations I've been having lately, the more intimate conversations are honestly, people don't like, they're not planning for their future. They're not planning like they have a future. I talked to one woman today. She told me about all of her friends that died. She showed me pictures of them, and then she showed me pictures of family that died. I had a meeting with another person who, psychosocial documentation is a part of my work here, and just getting their sort of traumatic stories and really understanding what they're going through is a part of this. And they don't have a way out. Like, there's nothing coming to save them. It feels like people are less hopeful than they were, and that they're at a breaking point, because even if they're extremely strong and faithful, they are seeing the writing on the wall, which is they don't have food to eat, and they're being bombed, and they're being displaced, and Gaza's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And they know that Hamas is like willing to do what Israel kind of wants, and that even all of them at this point would leave Gaza if they were allowed. And so it's like, doesn't feel like, and I don't mean all of them, but many of them would say, yes, just get me out. Like, I'm a regular person and I need out. Like, I need to eat. And they're like, they're not doing that. So they're like, well, it sounds like we're just being exterminated. Like, it sounds like there's no future here. And those conversations are hard because I have nothing to say. I have nothing to say. Usually I'm chock full of sort of hopefulness, and like the type of person who I really, really enjoy trying to help people feel better. And it's hard to do that because it's like you're just being fraudulent. You're being a fraud,
Mm.
And that's what's going on right now in terms of tone, and in terms of vibe of the feelings that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Afif, it sounds like, and you can tell me if this doesn't sound like the right characterization, but it sounds like doing aid work in a death camp. Is that what it kind of feels like you're doing?
And it feels like I'm doing aid work in a death camp, and that I'm not doing aid work at all, because it's like all I can actually offer at this point is, which I do think is important, is company, is stories and talking, and being able to just literally go back and forth and discuss what we think and how we feel, and just being human together. But in terms of giving aid, there's no equipment, there's no food. So it feels sometimes really hard to admit, but it feels like, what can I do to make these people feel better? And the answer keeps coming back to me. And it's like, there's nothing you can do. Like, you are only one person, and it is going to take the entire world to stop this. And the world is not doing anything.
Mm-hmm. Well, Afif, we really appreciate you being willing to join us again and helping shed some light for what's really going on. Afif Nassouli, humanitarian medical worker in Gaza, thank you so much for joining us on the Freedom Side.
Always appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for having me.